You are listening to Talking Africa, the podcast that gets behind the news from the continent, brought to you by the Africa Report. For all your news, analysis and opinion, head to theafricareport.com. I'm Nick Norbrook. Welcome to the pod. We have a terrific conversation for you this week. Moeletsi Mbeki, the author of Architects of Poverty, the Deputy Chairman of South Africa's Institute of International Affairs, and the outspoken brother to South Africa's former president, Thabo Mbeki. Moeletsi speaks to our editor-in-chief, Patrick Smith, about what ails Africa's most sophisticated economy, from the inaction of President Cyril Ramaphosa, his reading of the ruling ANC as being simply a jobs distribution machine, and the possible ways out, including the potential for a popular uprising. Are we seeing the conditions there for a South African spring?
There's a lot of talk about this deal in the making, a sort of new framework deal between COSATU, the main national trades union federation in South Africa, the government, and business in the form of the Business Unity South Africa group. And that's talking about trying to refinance Eskom and this pay off some of its debt using the PIC, the big public investment corporation in which South African workers pay their pensions. Do you think that that deal has any credibility, and do you think it will fly?
Well, it's a no-brainer, really. It's a bag of money that is the pensions of government employees.
Yeah.
So anyone could have said, well, government needs money to pay a debt.
Yeah.
Go and pick that up. There is zero originality in it. Mm-hmm. There's nothing new about it. Every time the government needs money, people say, go and take the government employees pension fund and finance.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything that's the reality about government employee pension fund is that when you retire under the law, you have to be given the pension that you have contributed and that the employer has contributed. So if you take it from the government employee pension fund, it's just increasing the debt of the government. So instead of the government being indebted to the commercial bank, it becomes indebted to the pensioners.
And is there a danger that if government finances don't improve over the next 10, 20 years, then there's going to have to be some reckoning with the workers who are starting their retirement? In other words, their pension rights are going to be cut if the government can't afford to. I mean, do you think this deal is actually putting the future of worker pensions at risk in South Africa?
Well, it does put the pension of the government workers.
Right.
Because the PIC, public investment commissioners, they invest the money that belong to public servants.
Yeah.
So that is the risk. But again, according to the law, they have to be paid what they have contributed. The pensioners.
Right.
So that's unlikely to become a conflict between the government employees or retiring government employees and the government.
Okay.
What it creates is it's a new creditor. All it does is make the government employees pension fund a new creditor to the government. So it raises the debt of the government.
And COSATU was saying, as part of this scheme to bail out Eskom with the PIC money, that two conditions: no privatization of Eskom and no retrenchments or job cuts at Eskom. And as the Eskom management itself says that out of the 46,000 odd employees at Eskom, probably there's 16,000 too many. The World Bank goes much further. It says that actually Eskom is 60% overstaffed. that seems to be a fairly unbridgeable divide between the COSATU representatives and the ESCOM management.
Yes, I think the trade unions, the Congress of South African Trade Unions, COSATU, used to be a very powerful player in this country, especially during the struggle against apartheid.
Right.
It is no longer that.
Uh-huh.
It's a very weak player. It is very divided. It fractured a few years ago.
Right.
And a new federation came up. The largest union used to be the National Union of Mine Workers.
Right.
This is now it too fractured.
Right.
So the trade unions in this country are very weak. So you have to take with a pinch of salt what trade unions are saying, because they've got no muscle, they've got no credibility. They were probably told by the government what to say. COSATU was probably told by the government to say, use the government pension fund. So I don't take seriously what COSATU says.
But one thing COSATU are doing and have done is to back very strongly Cyril Ramaphosa, because they were seen as one of the big supporters of Ramaphosa in the run-up to the elective conference in December 2017.
Yeah, but Cyril Ramaphosa was elected with the money of big business.
Right.
It's them who put the money. COSATU didn't put any money to get Cyril elected. It was big business that put up the money to get Ramaphosa elected to the presidency of the ANC. So there's a lot of exaggeration. There's lots of myths about the power of the unions. The unions are no longer powerful in this country.
And what about the other group in the tripartite alliance between COSATU, the African National Congress, the South African Communist Party? What about their power compared to how it used to be 20 years, 30 years ago?
The South African Communist Party was powerful in the ANC in exile.
Right.
It is no longer powerful today.
It
has no independent constituency. It does not stand for elections on its own.
Right.
So it's a caucus, if you want to be nice. It's a caucus within the ANC, but it has no real power.
Is it not a source of ideas and policies for the ANC, or it's even lost that role?
No, it's lost that role. If it ever had it, it doesn't have it.
Some would say, I mean, you used to look at the national executive of the ANC and see how many members on that executive were from the South African Communist Party.
That was in the exile days.
Right.
The exile ended 30 years ago.
Right.
So, Patrick, you have to start to get with it. You're talking about 30 years ago. You're not talking about the South Africa of today.
So in terms of the power brokers of the African National Congress today, the people who dominate the NEC, who are these people? Where do they come from? Where do they get their power?
They haven't got much power. Of course, they're elected by the branches and by the provinces, but they're not very powerful. Right. Many of them are newcomers to the ANC. They only joined the ANC after the ANC was unbanned. Yeah. So they're not very powerful. So the National Executive Committee of the ANC, the cabinet essentially runs the country, not the National Executive Committee of the ANC.
So there are some people, though, that say that Ramaphosa himself is in a very fragile situation, that he doesn't command a majority, a comfortable majority, certainly on the National Executive Committee. He doesn't even command a comfortable majority in the top 6 elective positions of the ANC. And then if you look across the provinces and provinces and the branches, there's people doubt the support for him across the nation. Is his own position in jeopardy right now, do you think?
Well, I wouldn't say it's in jeopardy because Ramaphosa is not doing anything to have his position threatened. Your position get threatened because you do something that upsets some and pleases others. Yeah. He's actually doing nothing. Yeah. So his position is not threatened. And I think the ANC really today is about access to government jobs. That's
Right.
what the ANC is about. You join the ANC in order to get access to government jobs, not because you have different policies from somebody else. So that's what the core business of the ANC has become, is distribution of government jobs amongst its members, rather than policies, rebuilding the country, and all the issues that one would associate with a party like the ANC at this stage in its history.
But if that cocktail that you see at the moment continues, you've got growth of around 1%, maybe less than that, certainly economic depression or say recession, certainly in terms of the population growth. You've got this crisis at ESCOM, load shedding, frequent power cuts. You've got ballooning debt. Surely, I mean, if you say that he's doing nothing, even doing nothing could be very dangerous. I mean, he's got to come up surely with some credible policies or solutions for this. Otherwise, there will be a political challenge. I mean, people talk about political challenges at the moment. There's the so-called fight back group. There are other politicians, people like Paul Mashatile, people like Lindiwe Sisulu, who are regarded as having their eye on the top job simply because Ramaphosa has been losing support or is increasingly criticized behind the scenes.
Well, they are part of the government. There was a study released, a survey released during the World Economic Forum a couple of weeks ago, which showed that the least trusted government in the world is the South African government.
Wow.
It only has 20% trust by the South African population.
Yeah.
So all these people that you are naming, they have nothing to offer South Africa. They want to become president, but they have not told us what solution they are going to do they have to solve our poverty, to solve our 38% unemployment. They just want to be president and be driven around in very expensive and free government cars.
Where do you think, in that case, the change in South Africa's politics and economy is going to come from? if Ramaphosa hangs on or he gives way to somebody else, you don't see any change through the ANC. What forces, what agents are going to come in and change things?
Well, the strongest player in South Africa are the big corporations, is the private sector, and especially the big corporations, the banks, the mining companies. Those are the telecommunication companies. Those are the big players in our country. If they feel very uncomfortable, they can bring about change. They can mobilize a lot of constituencies like the church. The church is very powerful in South Africa. The churches are very powerful. So they can mobilize, but they don't feel that the situation warrants an intervention by them. It's not too uncomfortable. And anyway, for example, the mining companies, the government now says that they can generate their own electricity rather than depending on the government company to supply them with electricity. So they are getting concessions from the government that they want. So as of now, they don't want any big change.
I mean, in terms of, you've written pretty widely and a couple of very trenchant books on economic development in South Africa, diversification, getting a really strong black entrepreneurial class going in this country, and which you don't think was achieved under the so-called black empowerment programs. How is that going to happen then? I mean, where is the force for that? I mean, presumably multinational corporations don't have a lot of interest in helping black entrepreneurs. They perhaps would regard them as competition. So where is that change that you were talking about in your books? Where's that going to come from?
No, the black entrepreneurs have not materialized. Because the government pays huge salaries. So for young black professionals, you're better off working for the state rather than setting up your taking a risk and setting up an enterprise, a startup or